Hey everybody, welcome back to Baking with Rose Hill Sourdough. I'm Mike, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make your first proofing basket loaf. This is the first time you've ever made a loaf that's going into a proofing basket. This is a fantastic first recipe to use. It's really easy to work with. It's going to make sure that dough doesn't stick in your proofing basket. So let's get started. Our target dough temperature is 27°C, about 80 F. The best way to get there is to use warm water. We're going to start this recipe with 330 grams of warm water. I like to use water right around 33°C or 92 F for this to make sure that my dough temperature is right once the dough is all mixed. So we're going to start with 330 grams of water. That's going to put our hydration right around 74%. To that I'm going to add 10 grams of salt, or about 2.3%. I'm just going to swish that around to make sure that the salt completely dissolves. I fed some sourdough this morning. It's doubled in size. I'm now going to use that sourdough, 90 grams of it, which is just about 20%. Don't worry that I'm adding the sourdough to the salty water. It's no big deal. The salt and the sourdough are fine together. I'm just going to mix that up until it gets milky in color. If you're watching this and you're not understanding what the percentages is that I'm using, go ahead and check out my video on baking percentages and baker's math, and that'll explain exactly what I'm saying. To the water, I'm going to add a mix of flour. This is 355 grams of bread flour, that's 80%, and 90 grams of whole wheat flour, that's 20%. I'm just going to mix this until there's no more dry flour in the bowl. Hey, if you like what you're seeing, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. If you haven't already, shoot me a follow over on Instagram at Rose Hill Sourdough. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. So our total timeline for this recipe is 6 hours before it goes into the fridge. So I want you to do two things right now. I want you to set two timers. One for 5 hours and 15 minutes. That's when we're going to bench rest our dough. And another for 45 minutes. Every 45 minutes, we're gonna be folding this dough. So this is done right now. It's mixed. There's no more dry flour. That's looking good. I'm going to go grab a lid and put it in my oven with just the light on. And I'll see you back here in 45 minutes. All right, welcome back. So it's been 45 minutes and now we're going to do the first of our folds. This is called a stretch and fold, and you'll see why in a second. I'm just gonna check my dough temperature here. Remember, we wanted to be around 80 F, 27°C, and we're at 26°C. So that's right in the ballpark where we're trying to be, so I'm happy about that. When you do a stretch and fold, you want to use lightly wet hands. So I've got a little bit of water here. I'm going to put a little bit of water on my hands until they're just a little bit wet so the dough won't stick. You don't want your hands too wet because you don't want to incorporate more water into the dough. Just a little bit will do. All right, let's do our first fold. So this is called a stretch and fold. What you're going to do is reach in, grab a little bit of dough, pull up and back, and fold it over the top. Quarter turn, do the same thing. Quarter turn, do the same thing. Just going to repeat this process until the dough wants to lift up out of the bowl. All right, dough's feeling like it wants to lift up out of the bowl, so I'm just going to do one last one. Turn it, lift up, and look, the whole dough is now up out of the bowl. I put it back in, and now I'm going to tuck it so the seam is now down. That's the importance of a stretch and fold. You're establishing a smooth side that's up and a seam side that's down in your bowl. Now I'm just going to use a technique called a rhubarb technique. When you're performing a rhubarb technique, you're simply building a little bit of tension in your dough and giving the dough a nice smooth top. As you move your hands into the bowl, you press down gently and pull back towards you and repeat that motion similar to a diving arm mixer. And I'm going to stop now because I see that the dough is starting to tear and I don't want to do that. I want it to be nice and smooth on top. So now I'm done. So now I'm just going to put the lid on, put it back in my warm spot, let it sit for 45 more minutes, and then we'll come back here and we'll do another type of fold called a coil fold. All right, cool, so it's been 45 more minutes. Just went and got my bread out of the warm oven with the light on. Just gonna check the temp. Again, sitting right at that 26°C mark, so right around the 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is perfect for what we're looking for. This next fold is gonna be called a coil fold. It's gonna be the same fold that you're gonna do every single time from here on out. I'm gonna show you what that looks like right now. With lightly wet hands, you're going to reach into the bowl from both sides, bring your hands underneath the dough, gently lift up and pull back, and let the dough flap down under itself. You're gonna turn 180 degrees, do the same thing, maybe a couple times if it needs it to start to build some tension. Then a turn of 90 degrees, 180 degrees again, and you're gonna keep repeating the same process until the dough starts to look something like this. You can give it one final coil fold just to kind of tighten it up, but that's really it. I did that maybe 8 times or so. You're really gonna have to listen to your dough and let it tell you how much more it can take. Once it starts to tighten up like this, then it's done. It's taking all the folds it can. It's gonna start tearing. We don't want that. Just gonna cover this again, put it back into your warm oven and let it sit for another 45 minutes, and then we're gonna do the exact same process again. And we're gonna keep doing that until that original 5 hour and 15 timer goes off, and then we'll do our bench rest. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get there. See you in 45. All right, so it's been another 45 minutes, and I'm gonna show you how to do another coil fold. Now, I'm not gonna show you every 45 minutes how to do a coil fold. It will get easier and easier every time you fold. I'm just gonna show you this one last time, and then you're gonna continue to do coil folds every 45 minutes until that 5 hour and 15 timer goes off. When that happens, I'll meet you back down here, and we'll show you how to do a coil fold and then do a bench rest. Okay, so it's 1 stretch and fold followed by 6 coil folds every 45 minutes. After that last one, we'll do a bench rest. I'll show you what that means right after this. Let's do one last coil fold just to show you what that looks like. Again, lightly wet hands. Come in from the sides. Gently lift and pull back. And that dough should be releasing pretty well from your bowl and from your fingers. Again, I'm just gonna do this until the dough tells me it doesn't want to move anymore. And right about there, that looks really good. No stretch marks or breaks in the dough, and the dough's not looking thin in the middle, so I think that's where I'm gonna stop right there. Dough's looking really nice. Again, just put the lid on it, put it again somewhere warm for 45 minutes. Now, every time you do one of these, or every other time you do one of these, you just wanna check the temperature again and see how you're doing. So I'm just under my target temperature, so I'm gonna put it back in my warm oven and make sure that it stays right around that 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius mark. Again, you're just trying to stay in that range so that this timeline works properly for you. The warmer you go, the faster it'll go. The cooler it is, the slower it'll go. So to maintain this timeline, I recommend the temperature be around 26 C or 80F. All right, so I'm gonna keep coil folding this every 45 minutes until that 5 hour and 15 timer goes off. When that happens, I'll come back down here and show you what to do next. So keep coil folding every 45 minutes. The 5:15 mark, we'll do a bench rest. I'll show you what that means in just a second. All right, so the 5 hour and 15 minute timer just went off, and my bread is looking really good. Nice and fluffy and really airy. It's proofed really well, and now I'm going to do a bench rest. Bench rest is really important for letting that top layer of your dough dry out. It's really important specifically for when you're using a proofing basket for the first time. You don't want that dough to stick, so you want to do a bench rest. At least half an hour. I like to do a full hour. In this recipe, we're gonna do one for 45 minutes. What we have to do is really simple. We're gonna do a coil fold, and on the last time that we coil it, we're gonna just lift it out of the bowl and put it on our bench and leave it uncovered. We're gonna do lightly wet hands, a little sheen on the hands. Come in and do our coil fold. This dough is looking really nice. It's got a ton of volume. It's looking great. We're gonna do the same procedure that we've done. And then once it feels like you can release it from the bottom of the bowl and it won't stick anymore, then we're gonna pull it out of the bowl. And that's just about feeling like that for me. There we go. All right. I'm just gonna put it straight down, just like that, on my bench. And it's looking great. The dough is looking really nice, really bubbly. And it's gonna just sit here now for 45 minutes and dry out, and then we'll come back and we'll shape it and put it into our new proofing basket. All right, so I'll set a timer for 45 minutes and I'll be back then. All right, so this has been resting for 45 minutes on the bench, doing a bench rest, and now we're going to put it in our proofing basket. First, we're going to shape it. So I want to show you my shaping technique and how to prep and get the bread from this state into the basket so we can proof it overnight in the fridge. So let's get going. So you're going to start with some flour. Take a pinch of flour, and I'm just going to lightly coat the top of the bread and just around my bench. Use a bench scraper to loosen the dough off the bench, and then you're gonna put the bench scraper underneath and flip it over. All right, just like that. Okay, now that I've got my dough here, I'm going to grab both edges, pull out to the side, and then back in towards the center. And I'm going to take the bottom and fold it up towards the middle. It's called the letter stitch technique. So that's my letter, and now I'm going to stitch from the center all the way to the top. Now this dough got really dry sitting out. That's all right. Next time I'll do a bench rest for a little bit less time. You can tell because it's not quite stitching together, but it's looking pretty good. Grab the tip, up top, fold it over to the center, and then roll down using your thumbs, pressing down to tighten up that seam on the bottom. Great. Now we've got our loaf of bread. We're gonna put that into our proofing basket. So to do that, we're gonna prep our basket by putting a little bit of flour in it. Looks good. And then we're going to take our flour and we're gonna put a little bit more on the top of our loaf. Take our bench scraper again, clear off any excess flour. You'll see why in a second, because you don't wanna get any on the bottom. Lift up the dough. And then you're going to pinch the dough as you gently place it down into your basket. Then you can go through and give it a little bit of extra tension and go through and stitch up that seam nice and tight. All right, we've got our loaf of bread. This is going to go into the fridge overnight. We're going to put a bread mat on top of it and then a towel. And this is going to go just in the fridge, just like this, overnight. In the morning, we're gonna bake it. So I'm gonna go put this in the fridge now. Tomorrow morning, I'll show you how to score and bake this loaf. It's looking really good. I'm excited to see how it comes out. So I will see you tomorrow morning. All right, so it's the next morning. My dough has been in the fridge for about 11, 12 hours, and now I'm going to score it and show you what that looks like. So take my towel off there, flip the proofing basket over onto the bread mat, and then shake the bread mat a little bit to loosen the loaf so it falls out onto it. All right, just like that. Cool, now I've got my loaf on my bread mat, and now I'm just going to rub down the surface so there's no clumps of flour. You can actually add a little bit more flour to this if you want a little more contrast. All right, now I'm gonna take my lame or lame, however you say it. It's a razor blade, essentially. This one is from Wire Monkey Shop. It's the Poco. It's my go-to. It's a great little lame. It's a razor blade with a protective sheath to keep your fingers from getting cut. I'm going to do one long slash, and then I'm going to show you how to do a wheat stalk. So let's do that. Come in at a bit of an angle to your bread, and you're going to cut all along. If you need to go back and forth a little bit, that's okay. Try to limit that though. You kind of want to just come in and do one long cut. So let's see what that looks like. Hold the bread a little bit with your fingers just to keep it tight. And then it should look something like that. So a little bit of an angle, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch depth, all the way along the loaf. And then what I like to do is come in again and get a little bit extra cut just to make sure nothing's hung up, just to make sure that I get a really nice opening, a good oven spring. So things that are going to give you good oven spring is building good tension in your bread and also making sure that you score properly. The deeper you score, the more it's going to open up, and that's important when you score intricate patterns. So I'm going to do just one wheat stalk. I'm not going to score as deeply. So this won't open as much. So let me go get this in the oven. My oven has been preheating for about 45 minutes. It's set to 475 Fahrenheit. If you can't get to that, if you can only get to like 450, 230 C, that's fine. Just set it to that. I am going to be baking it in a Lodge cast iron combo cooker. And the last thing I need to do before I put it in there is take 2 ice cubes, one on each side, just like that. We're going to bake it for 35 minutes covered, then we're going to remove the lid and bake it for an additional 12 minutes uncovered. That's what's going to give us that good color. So covered is going to trap the steam, especially from our ice cubes there, going to give us a really good oven spring, and then uncovered is going to give us really good contrast and good crust crunch. So let's go take care of that right now. All right, so our bread has been resting for, I don't know, about an hour or so, stopped crackling. It's now safe to touch, still warm, but easy to handle. First of all, look at the bottom of that. That's just a great color. And that's coming from the bread mat. So the bread mat's gonna help you bake better bread. That's one of the ways it's gonna help by giving you that gorgeous golden brown bottom. Let's slice this open and see what the crumb looks like. Move my cooling rack out of the way. Grab my cutting board and let's cut this up. It smells amazing down here. Let's check it out. All right, so our crumbs looking really nice. Nice and even. The smell is so good. Fresh baked bread, there's just nothing better than that. Let's get a slice and see how it tastes. It's so good. Nice little sour tang from the wholemeal, from the cold proof, but not overly sour. Really, really tasty. The crispiness of the edge, that's really what you're getting with a proofing basket, is that little crispiness. If we can isolate that sound, but it's so crispy, and that's coming from the moisture being sucked out of the bread, and that's due to the proofing basket. So that's what the proofing basket's gonna do for you, and your bread's gonna help you bake better bread by giving you that little bit of extra crispiness. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna go enjoy some fresh, warm bread out of the oven. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments below, or like I said before, DM me on Instagram. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Cool, I'm gonna go enjoy some bread. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you again soon.